Well, I think it's safe to say that global Wu flu hysteria is well past its peak. But before I get into that, I do want to point out to people who are listening on YouTube, I do now have a Rumble. I did not realize how easy it was. They make it very easy. It took about 5 minutes to just sync my YouTube with Rumble. So if you use that platform a lot, you can find me there. My name is still Sultan of Smug. I've been on BitChute for well over a year. My name over there is also Sultan of Smug. So you got 3 places to find me. If I ever get kicked off YouTube, I had another video removed the other day. Ironically, it was a video where I was criticizing Sidney Powell, and I called her a clown. And even that apparently was way too election misinformation-y for YouTube. They didn't give me a strike, so I didn't bother appealing it. It was one of those things where they retroactively remove something that was in compliance with the rules at the time, but later on they make a rule, and I'm like, I don't even care. Nobody's going to go back and watch that video. And if you really want to, it's on BitChute, and now it's on Rumble. Actually, now that I think about it, no, it was removed before I made my Rumble. So that video is now a BitChute exclusive. It's a very rare Sultan of Smug vintage classic, but anyway, with that out of the way, we have 2 stories which are, pretty well connected. They're both about Omicron. The doctor in South Africa who first discovered the Omicron variant was apparently, they tried to silence her. The European Union did. They did not want her to let the cat out of the bag how mild this was. If you remember at the time, I pointed out, I thought it was very strange that this woman was doing a media campaign across Western media, going on doing interviews, and she was, arguing with the journalists and telling them, no, this is not that bad. This is a mild cold. This is great. There's nothing really to worry about. Because all the journalists and things were having her on their programs, obviously, to fearmonger about this and to say, hey, here's why we need more lockdowns and why we need vaccine passports. And she wouldn't give them that. She did not think that was a good idea. She thought it was ridiculous. And that, this new variant, which completely wiped out the older variants in South Africa, completely supplanted it, is much, much milder, and it's not a big deal. And, surprise, surprise, Western authorities, which have been using hysteria over the Wu flu to build up a totalitarian state in every Western nation over the last couple of years, they did not like her coming out and blowing the whistle on that. They wanted to be able to fearmonger over a new variant because they could just say, oh, well, it's a new variant. Oh, my gosh, you should be very afraid. This is bad news. It's something new. It's big, scary. It's unknown. But the problem was the truth was known. It wasn't a big unknown that they could fearmonger over, because that's how you scare people, is by depriving them of information. People are scared when they don't know something. They are scared of things that they don't understand. And so by this woman going on TV and spreading the word and informing people, she was making people feel better. She was alleviating their fears. She was making people feel more comfortable, and you can't have that. The name of the game in public health is stoking fear. The point of these public health professionals is to scare people into, one, consuming drugs which enrich, one, the pharmaceutical industry, and two, the public health officials themselves, who are often have a vested financial interest in these pharmaceutical products. And then their second job is to stoke fear, to promote government intervention in people's lives. It's almost it's a symbiotic relationship. It's almost like what the public health establishment, the Faucis of the world, the price that they have to pay to the government in being given this platform to hawk their drugs and to enrich themselves, is they have to then go on TV and promote the interests of the state and tell people why it's in the interest of public health to give ever more power and influence to the state. Because at the end of the day, all the worst people in the world, all of their actions come down to power and money. And this woman, this doctor in South Africa, who discovered the Omicron variant, clearly was not motivated by power or money. Because everything that she said by saying that this variant is mild, it's not super life-threatening. It's not filling up their hospitals in South Africa. They did not have a problem with their hospitals being overrun, their ICU beds, and saying that it is essentially wiping out the older, more dangerous variants of the virus. That was all a threat to the people who want power and who want money. Because if people are less afraid of the virus, they're going to feel less compelled to consume dubious pharmaceutical products, which are rather novel in and of themselves. In fact, they're more novel at this point than the virus by definition. They were developed after the virus was discovered. And then you've also got people who are probably going to be less open to the idea of the government seizing new powers if the threat of the virus is not that serious. For example, if we just had, a normal year where we have the seasonal flu, it would be absurd for the government to come in and say, hey, you need to essentially give over all of your liberties to us, and we need to build a totalitarian state to prevent people from dying from the flu. Everybody would laugh at that. That would be absurd. And that's why they did not want this woman going around and making people less afraid of the Wu flu. But alas, they failed. They couldn't silence her. The intimidation did not work. And she bravely informed the public the world over. And we're all much better off for it now because the government is losing its justification for these totalitarian measures. Yes, the big topic the last couple weeks has been Canada, but quietly, other U.S. states are now following in the footsteps of Saskatchewan and Alberta, which, of course, are these great. They're not overnight going to turn into Florida. Alberta does not seem very keen on just rolling everything back and giving people their freedoms. They're doing it very begrudgingly and very slowly and very conditionally. But we're seeing the same process now starting to play out in a bunch of Northeast blue states. New York, Connecticut, New Jersey, all of these places. There's probably more that's just what came to mind off the top of my head. This week are announcing they're going to be rolling back their restrictions. New York is dropping the indoor mask mandate, except for school children. Obviously wouldn't want to slight the teachers' unions, so they have to keep it in place for school children. And again, all these states, whether it's Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, they're not trying to give people all these freedoms like we have here in Florida, where we just live normal lives, just like we always have. They're just rolling things back a little bit because there's just no justification for any of it at this point. So they have to they're losing their grip. They're being dragged kicking and screaming towards a sense of normalcy. And really, it all comes back to this woman discovering the Omicron variant and making it clear to the world just how mild it is. There have been a very loud minority of doctors who have done the right thing and have actually tried to help people throughout this whole period and have not just been paid corporate shills or, shills for the government. There have been a lot of brave people online who have wanted to report the truth about this. Some even professional journalists. You have Alex Berenson, for example, who genuinely is trying to get the truth out and find out what is correct, find good data, synthesize it, and publish it. And so there have been a lot of a lot of new heroes that we've discovered over the last couple of years. Well, a hero is probably way too strong of a word, but good guys that we didn't know about before. And what I'm trying to say is that this South African doctor, she's one of them. And I haven't said her name once because one, I can't remember it, and two, I can't pronounce it very well. I believe it's it's an Afrikaner name, and the way that those are spelled sometimes, usually I can figure it out, but in her case, I looked at that and I said I'm not going to say her name. Now, before I close, I will do a quick update on Canada. I don't think that there was enough to spend the whole day talking about it, but there were it's a constantly evolving situation, and the latest that I'm seeing is that it doesn't appear that. Well, it appears that the bridge, the Ambassador Bridge between Windsor and Detroit, is still largely shut down. I kept seeing conflicting reports about it being partially reopened, and from what I'm seeing today, it seems to be pretty much shut down to the point to where, if you're in Detroit or Windsor and you're trying to cross the river, you're just not even going to try taking that bridge. Sure, there might be a trickle of a couple people getting through, but effectively it's shut down. Nobody's going to be using the bridge. Up in Ottawa, there was an interesting encounter between a CBC journo and one of the truckers, to where they were bringing up how Child Protective Services, or whatever they call it in Canada, their equivalent of CPS, put out some kind of statement to where they're concerned that there are children at this terrible, white supremacist insurrection, and that those children are not safe because, of course, they don't have heat since the fuel was being stolen from them, and these children might be cold and they're malnourished and not receiving proper care, and essentially implying that they are considering stealing the children and kidnapping any children who are at this protest, which is, this is the most intimidating thing you can do to a parent. Is the greatest threat that you could ever inflict is threatening to take away someone's children. The obvious point being trying to say, hey, if these people are decent parents and they want to keep their kids, they're not going to take the chance of sticking around. They're going to get the hell out of there if there's even a chance that the government is considering taking away their children. That's the hope here. And they want people to be scared. They want them to be afraid. And the CBC journo, walked up to a guy and said, "Hey, what do you think about this? What are your thoughts on Child Protective Services taking away children because they're unsafe here?" And the guy flipped out on him. And then the journo's crying and whining about how he's such a victim. You just went up to a guy, you as an agent of the state, because remember, this is CBC, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. It's a government entity. It is the Canadian equivalent of the BBC. This is state television. Walking up to a guy and saying, "Hey, the state is threatening to take away your children. How do you feel about that?" and you say, and the journal is trying to act like, "Well, I'm just asking questions." Like Jesse Ventura, "I'm just asking questions." No, you're an agent of the state talking about how the state is threatening to take away this guy's kids. You, therefore, are threatening to take away that guy's kids. You are threatening to kidnap his children. I mean, it's the worst thing, just about the worst thing, that you can threaten to somebody. So obviously the guy's going to become irate and livid. And he told off the news crew. He said, "Hey, you guys sold your souls a long time ago. You work for the devil." I mean, there's no other way to put that. I mean, I can't think of how they could get much lower than threatening to take away people's kids just to discourage them from protesting the government. But as Ezra Levant pointed out, this is clearly their attempt to try and pivot, because the white supremacist line of insults has not worked. It hasn't diffused the situation. It hasn't gotten people to not support them or whatever. That smear didn't work. And so now they're having to smear them as child abusers. And it's very clear that the reason why the CBC went down there to talk about this with these people was to try and build up that story and to start putting it out. And it was fake news being produced in real time. Now, in addition to that, which is by far the worst thing that the Canadian government has threatened to do to these people, they're now threatening to seize their vehicles. They're threatening to, well, actually, I guess it's not as bad as what they do in America. According to the headline that I saw, which I believe was CBC, I'll try and link to it. they are threatening to seize the vehicles and then confiscate them upon conviction, which means, like, wait, if these people were to be acquitted of whatever, trumped up charges are pressed against, brought against them, they would actually get their stuff back, because that's not how it works here in America. If if the government seizes your property as part of an arrest, and you get acquitted, or even if they don't bring any charges, period, you don't get your stuff back. They just get to keep that. A cop can pull you over, and you've got your hands at 10 and 2, and he'll look down and he'll go, "Hey, that's a nice watch," and he can just tell you to take off your watch. He can take your watch and he can put it on his own wrist and walk away. That's just, so maybe in one small sense, there's one area in which Canadians are more free than Americans. It's not enough to make all this other crap worthwhile, but maybe, at least if these people somehow get acquitted of their trumped-up political charges, it sounds like they at least would get their stuff back. But the threat is clear, leave now or lose your livelihood. There have been liberal politicians calling for this, local politicians, to end the insurrection, take away people's licenses, because, of course, you need a special license to drive a semi-truck, take away their trucks, make these people destitute, punish them, make them so sorry that they would, get down on their knees and worship the state. And they've issued somewhat similar threats in Couts, well, actually not in Couts itself, at the Milk River blockade, which is where all the supporters of the Couts protest have amassed, because the Mounties set up a blockade to keep more people from entering Couts and joining the blockade. So they just built up around the Mounties' own blockade. So the Mounties are saying, "Oh no, now you have to move off of this highway and you have to go somewhere else. We have a designated protest area, a free speech zone." And now they're commanding people to move there, and it's all so disgusting. Interestingly, though, there are now 2 Liberal MPs who have defected, not in the sense of changing parties, but just in the sense of saying, hey, maybe these guys have a point. Maybe the restrictions are a little tiny bit extreme. So I'm sure they'll be labeled, white supremacists and whatnot, and banished from their party. They'll become the Tulsi Gabbards of Canada, or maybe more libs will join them and say, hey, we agree. We don't all stand for this. So it'll be very interesting to see how the situation escalates, because obviously these folks say they want to stay in all these places. They say they want to stay until they get their way. Justin Trudeau has said he won't give an inch, and so what that basically means is that these people will remain entrenched until Trudeau or local or provincial governments remove these people by force. And we've already seen that not only the tow truck companies in Alberta that could show up at Couts, but, not only did they deny the government any sort of services. They're saying, no, we're not going to participate in towing away these, the trucks of these people and, helping you steal their stuff and end the blockade. We're not going to assist you in that. Even in Ottawa, they're having this problem. Tow truck companies in Ottawa and even surrounding cities refuse to participate in breaking up the protest movement. So you know what, at this point, I've cited way too much news. I'm not going to be able to link to every single thing that I've said. You know what, I'm not a journalist. I'm not your news source. I just talk about the news that I read. Okay? I try and put links so you can read about the stuff that I'm talking about, in case it's a story that you missed. But I talked about so many different things today. I don't know if I'm good. Won't even be able to remember all the things that I've referenced. At some point, maybe you got to find it on your own. So, with that said, this situation certainly will not be resolved by tomorrow. So, I will see you all back here then.